You are watching, you are listening to Can Jew Believe with me, Brad Pomerance. You may know me from Jewish Life Television. If you haven't subscribed or liked or whatever it is, go to canjewbelieve.com so you can sign up for everything about this wonderful podcast. And we are continuing our series, kind of an informal series, talking to members of, let's say, diverse communities throughout the world. And it is my honor, my pleasure to introduce you to Marcos Metta Cohen. To say he is a leader of the Mexican Jewish community would only be an understatement. His list just of current positions is remarkable. He's a leader in the Maccabi World Union, Centro Deportivo Israelita, the JCC Global, Jewish Funders Network, Global Jewry, Hispanic Jewish Foundation, LATAM. It just goes on and on and on. And Marcos, I want to thank you so much for joining us today.
No, thank you, Brad. It's an honor for me to be in your podcast. Thank you so much for inviting me.
Yes. So I want to talk briefly about kind of the history of the Mexican Jewish community. Look, we know that, around the time of the Inquisition, some Jews wound up in northern Mexico, southern Texas. They were conversos. Some of them stuck around in Nuevo Leon. But if we really look at the modern Mexican Jewish community, who are they? When did their ancestors arrive?
Well, the modern or the current Jewish community in Mexico started by the end of the 19th century, when President Porfirio Diaz, who was a dictator, a president that was in the office like more than 25 years,
Oh,
but
really?
he was very open to the European influence, issued an invitation for Jews, specific for Jews, European Jews, to come establish and invest in Mexico. So some of them came and established mostly in Mexico City by the end of the 19th century. We are talking about the 1890s, more or less.
Sure.
And at that time, Jews came, but there are no registers of any type of a communal organization.
Okay.
At the beginning of the 20th century, in the 1900s, the Ottoman Empire was starting to collapse before World War I, First World War. And many Jews flew from countries like Syria, from Turkey, from the Balkans zone, and emigrated to America. They wanted to emigrate. For example, the Syrian Jews were part of the Syria at that time, and Damascus and Aleppo were part of the Ottoman Empire. And there was this law that young boys or male had to be recruited to the Turkish army. So many families sent their kids because being recruited was mostly they are going to be dead soon. So
And let me ask you if I may, because when I think about Jews from the Ottoman Empire, presumably they were Sephardic,
Yeah.
and presumably they spoke Ladino, which was the language that was taken from Spain and Portugal. I call it Shakespearean Spanish.
Yeah. So
And
it's interesting that you mentioned that because the first like newspaper or newsletter of a Jewish newsletter or newspaper that existed in Mexico at the end of the 19th century was called the El Sábado Secreto, and it was written in Ladino.
Phenomenal. And if you were to read it as a native Spanish speaker in the 21st century, would you be able to understand it? Because
Mostly,
Ladino, Mostly, yes.
Yeah. Ladino is old Spanish,
Right.
okay, antique Spanish with words or some expressions or words in Hebrew. That's more or less Latin.
And as I understand it, today in the 21st century, the Mexican Jewish community, maybe 50, 60,000, still has those rich elements of the Ashkenaz, the
Well,
Sephardic, and specifically a large number of those Sephardic came from, like you said, Syria and other parts of the Ottoman Empire.
let me tell you how the story began at the
Please.
beginning of the 20th century. So I spoke about the Ottoman Empire immigration. Also, from some places in Europe, there were here Jews from Germany, from Russia, from Poland, okay, that emigrated also in before the First World War, and in 1912 or before 1912, let's say, Mexico entered the Mexican Revolution in 1910. The Mexican Revolution started in 1910. So it's interesting that the Jewish community started in the
The
first
middle.
years of
Yeah.
in the middle of the Mexican Revolution, the Mexican Revolution that was against Porfirio Diaz dictatorship. So those Jews that came without language, without any knowledge of the country, anything, and almost all of them with no penny in their pocket, okay, came established in Mexico. They came by ship through Veracruz in the Gulf of Mexico, and most of them established in the historical center of Mexico City, and started as peddlers, as small merchants, etc., etc. But then came the Mexican Revolution. At the same time, there's historical records that a rabbi from El Paso, Texas,
Huh.
called Rabbi Zielonka, okay, came to Mexico to explore what was the Mexican population, if there's Jewish life or not. And he was a rabbi of a synagogue in El Paso, Texas, that was called Mount Sinai.
Mm-hmm.
So he started to organize them to make religious services in Mexico City, etc., etc. And in 1912, the Jews that were from Sephardic Jews, Syrian Jews, and Ashkenazi Jews established the first Jewish institution in Mexico that was called Alianza Monte Sinai, in honor of Rabbi Zielonka. They took the name, okay, from Rabbi
Right.
Zielonka congregation in El Paso, Texas.
That's pretty stunning because if you think about the experience in America, the United States, in the early part of the 20th century,
Mhm.
you had Ashkenazi synagogues and you had Sephardic synagogues, and they didn't mix. I
Well,
mean, if an Ashkenaz married a Sephardic, that was a mixed marriage.
well,
But in Mexico City, it
mm,
seems like they came
it was
together.
a tiny population that
Mm-hmm.
started one unifying institution. Okay, so you see the first document or the constitution of this historical uh, um, um, Keilah or community,
Sure, sure, sure.
and the signers of that were Jews from all over. And
What about, if I may, your family?
my family
Your
came from
your your
my
family.
my family. My four grandparents came from Damascus.
So
Okay,
you are part of that Ottoman group. I mean, you literally descend from Sephardic Ottoman Jews.
from Sephardic Syrian Jews. Yes. But let me continue,
Please.
because it's very interesting what happened. So in 1912 was established Alianza Monte Sinai, okay, as a welfare institution to help Jews that were starting to establish it, to emigrate to Mexico. And the first and the motive, the main goal, the first goal of them was they needed to buy a land for a cemetery.
It's common.
That was the main intention of this gathering of Jews from all over, because Jews started to die in Mexico. So they needed to bury them according to the Jewish tradition. So the main goal was, we need to establish an institution recognized by the government, okay, to buy, that they will be allowed to buy a piece of land to bury our dead, okay? So that's a sign that they wanted to establish roots in the country. Because in order, if you start to bury your dead relatives, it's a sign that you want to establish roots in the country. And what we were in the middle in 1912 was the worst years of the Mexican Revolution. There was all types. There was one Jew, Ashkenazi Jew, European, that he was, I don't know if he was Polish or from Romania, I don't remember where, called Mr. Yakov Granat. He was a very wealthy entrepreneur. He brought to Mexico the first cinemas, okay? And he was the owner of Cinema Granat and other cinemas in Mexico City. And he was he belonged to the Masonry, okay?
Sure.
As President Francisco I. Madero, who also was a Mason, okay? The one that was the head, the leader of the Mexican Revolution, was a personal friend of Yakov Granat. And thanks to the service, and Yakov Granat gave him for free the use of their cinemas to make the gatherings of his movement. Okay? And that's why, after he succeeded and he was the president of Mexico, okay, he gave the authorization to Mr. Granat, who was the founder of Mount Sinai, together with others, to create this first institution. And after that, they received the permission to buy the land for the first cemetery that was established in Mexico.
And that cemetery still exists today.
Cemetery still exists today. There
Beautiful.
are buried my great grandparents.
Okay.
And also my grandparents and my father, Zichrono Libracha.
Sure.
So this institution started to work as the only Jewish community, unified Jewish community. But after the revolution, and whenever they started to grow the number of families that were establishing in Mexico, of course, they had a synagogue. They bought and built the first synagogue in the historical center, the Mount Sinai Synagogue, that is still in service today.
It's beautiful.
But the Ashkenazim and the Sephardic and the Syrian started to have a lot of discussions.
Shocking.
Okay.
Disputes, two Jews, three opinions.
Well, disputes because of language, because of culture, because of background, because of religiosity, etc., etc. And there was a first escission, you call, where someone
They
the
broke off.
the
They broke off.
the Ashkenazim broke off, and in the 1920s, they established their keilah, that now is called the Keilah Ashkenazi, but at that time it was called Nidhei Israel. Okay, and they bought two houses from the first synagogue, and established the Ashkenazi synagogue in Mexico City, in the same block. Okay.
It's funny you say that, because when I was in Turkey, I host a travel show in the city of Izmir. Back in, I guess, the late 1800s, early 1900s, there were 4 synagogues. They shared a wall. All 4 synagogues shared a wall for only 30,000 people, because God forbid this one shouldn't go to the other synagogue. So just like in Mexico City, God forbid the Ashkenaz and the Sephardic should mix. But look, the bottom line is, though, Marcos, is that those forefathers set up institutions that
Yeah.
are still thriving today.
Look,
My father recently was in Mexico City, and he went to the Jewish center, let's say, and was blown away by, I get chills even talking about it, by what he saw. In a
look,
strange way, Marcos, these smaller communities can be so much more tight-knit. And that's what I've learned about the Mexico City Jewish community, is your community is strong and mighty. Huge numbers of Mexican families send their kids to day schools.
well, we have the highest rate of
Enrollment.
school enrollment. We have 14 Jewish day schools. Okay,
14.
14. It includes the school in Monterrey, in the northern
Sure.
community. But, 95% of the Jews live in Mexico City and metropolitan area, okay? Out of those 50 or 60,000 Jews. We have 14 day schools, and the rate of attendance is 97%.
And compare that to America, where the rate of attendance in Jewish day schools, maybe 5%.
Well,
maybe.
In the
So that's remarkable.
The Mexican model is based, our backbone is the school system, okay?
Right.
Because 97% or 95% of our kids in school age attend Jewish day schools.
And
And
they
those-
also, if I may, participate in the largest Jewish community center in the world, in Mexico City.
Yes, the Jewish largest JCC is the CDI, the Centro Deportivo Israelita. That is like the melting pot of the community, because still to these days, the first, I spoke about Mount Sinai and I spoke about Keilah Ashkenazi. But after some years, after the creation of the Ashkenazi community, the Sephardim from Turkey, Greece, Balkans, Bulgaria, also created their own Sephardic community, and also their synagogues, their schools, and even their cemeteries. Okay? And some years after, so who remained in Mount Sinai? The Syrians. And in the 30s, the Aleppo's Syrians created their own community, okay?
So
And
those in Damascus, from Damascus and Aleppo, had to split up,
they
because God
split up,
forbid
and
we
they
should go to that
created-
one's temple.
They created the Tzedakah Umarpeh Keilah, that now is known as Magen David Keilah. So we had 4 different communities, according that their members are from different
But here's
origins.
what's remarkable.
So Mount Sinai
Yeah.
kept only the Damascus Jews, okay? And we had the Aleppo Jews, and then the Ashkenazi, and then the Sephardim.
But today, Marcos,
But
if
in
I
the
may, yeah,
1950s, sorry, in the
yeah, please,
1950s,
please.
young athletes from the community that
Mm,
were members of YMCA and were members of different sports clubs created the Maccabi Sports Organization. And some years after, they created in the 1944 the Centro Deportivo Israelita that opened its doors in 1950. We are celebrating 75 years of that institution. And that was the place, and still is the place, where all the different communities are members, and they participate in sports, arts, culture, and social activities until to this day. We have an attendance of 3 to 4,000 people every day,
it's
and
beautiful.
and we have 35 different sports, and we have like 20 different artistic and cultural activities, and is one of the biggest Maccabi institutions in the world.
And I've been to the Maccabi games in Israel, and Mexico uniformly sends huge
Well,
delegations.
we are expecting to send more or less 400 athletes this time for next Maccabia in the summer. But also, well, we are we participate in the JCC Maccabi Games of North America,
Right.
and we send delegations to the JCC Games since the first one. And we are very active, and we have a very close relations with JCCA.
I want to ask you about the president of Mexico,
Wow.
because the reality is, outside of Israel, there are two Jewish leaders of nations, in Ukraine and in Mexico. Claudia Sheinbaum is the president of Mexico. There are 130 million Mexicans. There are maybe 50,000 Jews. And yet, Claudia Sheinbaum, with that last name,
Sheinbaum Pardo.
yeah,
Sheinbaum from Poland, and
I think
Pardo
Lithuania. I
in
think Lithuania.
not
Yeah,
or Lithuania.
yeah,
Yes, from
yeah,
Lithuania,
yeah.
and Pardo from Bulgaria.
So here you have a woman who is 100% Jewish, on the mother's side and on the father's side, and she is elected. She, not only is it a she, but it's a Jewish she. She is elected president of Mexico in a
Yeah,
landslide.
first woman in in a very macho country,
Right, right, right.
and of course, first Jewish.
So let's talk about that.
Claudia Sheinbaum's family and she were members of the JCC of the
Did
city.
you know her growing up?
Well, no, because at we hosted a lunch when she was in 2020, when she was the mayor of Mexico City. We invited her to the CDI with all the leadership of the community, and she came in and she said, "Okay, I grew up here. I learned how to swim in this swimming pool," and she was very
Right.
emotional. We brought her the file of her family membership. Okay,
Wow.
with the pictures, with the carnet, the credentials, and she was very emotional. And she said, when our family lived in the Echegaray neighborhood that was very close to the CDI, we came here very often. But then my parents moved to the southern part of the city, next to the National University. Her parents were professors and were very active in the Communist Party of Mexico. Okay, so they pull out from the Jewish community,
Right.
and
Look, I would be.
she says always that yes, she's from Jewish origin. Okay, but she doesn't assume herself as a member of the Jewish community.
Right. I have heard that. But it is still stunning that everyone in Mexico knows she's Jewish,
Yes.
and she was still elected.
Well, it's a sign of the I don't know how to say it in English. It's a sign
Tolerance?
of the acceptance
Right,
and the relevancy of the Jewish community in all fields of of the life of the country.
right. So that being said, I would be remiss if I didn't acknowledge that there are many in the Jewish community in Mexico, while proud that a Jewish woman has been elected, are concerned that she is not a very vocal supporter of the state of Israel.
Well,
Is that fair?
yes, it's fair, but let me tell you, uh, here is where ideology and political ideology plays its role in her personality, in her convictions. Uh, she belongs. She was born in a communist family. She was active in the Communist Party. After that, she became active as a student of the UNAM, and all her life was very close to the left and to the militant left, a political militant left of Mexico. So her her positions regarding Israel, and of course now in the context of the war, the context of the 7th of October, in the context of the big uh, 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 campaign that we are facing all around the world against Zionism and Israel. Claudia Sheinbaum hasn't been a supporter of Israel vocally.
Has she been an opponent?
Has she what?
Been an opponent? Has she opposed Israel,
Oh,
or is she
she
more silent?
no. Well, she was like uh, silent in some way, but she made recent declarations saying that Israel is committing genocide
Hmm.
in
How
Gaza.
does that make you feel that the
Very bad.
Jewish president, yeah,
Look, yes, if we consider her uh, a Jewish president, okay, it hurts a lot. But we have to understand, she's not formally member of the community, okay?
mm,
She was born in a Jewish family.
right. And I
Uh,
must, if I may interrupt, you mentioned she's not a formal member of the community. That is not a concept that is well known in America. We don't have that type of you join the community, you're a formal member of the
yeah.
community. So I bring that up just for our audience in North America. I get what you're saying,
Well,
but yeah,
I mean, because in Mexico, as I mentioned, we have the highest rate of school attendance.
right.
We also have one of the highest rates of affiliation. Okay,
Exactly.
there's a very tiny minority of non-affiliated Jews. What it means non-affiliated, that do not belong to one of the Keilot. We have 5 Keilot in Mexico City. There are also Keilot communities in Monterrey, Guadalajara, Tijuana, Cancun, San Miguel de Allende, and maybe
And
also
she's not
Merida.
affiliated. She's
She's
not
not
affiliated.
affiliated to any of those
I understand.
institutions as a member. And of course, another form of membership is through the schools. Her kids didn't attend Jewish day schools.
Mm,
And,
okay.
and so uh, for us, she is Jewish by origin, and
Right.
she has a marginal relationship with her Jewishness. Okay.
In our final moments, Marcos, I want to ask you about life in Mexico in a post October 7th world. As you may know, in North America, United States and Canada, we have seen an explosion of hate against Jews.
Mhm.
Have you seen that in Mexico?
Look. we are experiencing what we never experienced before in the streets of Mexico City and in the streets of other cities where there are no Jewish population at all. We have a lot of demonstrations against Israel. Okay, there's a big activism of pro-Palestinians. In my opinion, mostly paid by those who sponsor this type of demonstrations and this type
Are
of
there many
movements.
Muslims in
There are no
Mexico?
Muslims at all.
Mm.
We have a very
No
tiny
Arabs, no
well,
Muslims.
there are Arabs, but mostly the Lebanese community that are most
Christian. Right,
Christians or
right,
Maronites. Okay,
right.
but and we have actually a great relationship with the Lebanese community at the level that we issued at the beginning of the war after October 7 a joint statement
Wow.
in favor of peace. And next week, no, in 2 weeks, we have our each 6 months there's a lunch of the leadership of the Jewish community with the Lebanese community of Mexico. So we have no, we are invited to the change of the leadership of the Lebanese community, and there's
So
a big, but there are no Muslims. Who are those who are demonstrating against Israel in the streets of Mexico? Left, progressive left, or extreme left individuals or groups of or collectives. Most of them are uh, uh, close to the Morena party. The Morena party is a party that now runs Mexico,
so
the
right.
party of Andrés Manuel López
Yeah.
Obrador and the current president, Claudia Sheinbaum. Even the sons of the former president, Andrés Manuel López Obrador, who is the leader of the movement, of the political movement, his sons constantly issue
Really.
in their social networks condemnations against Israel.
So my last question, sir. Before October 7th in America, anti-Semitism was really perceived as a problem on the right. Post October 7th, we saw that anti-Semitism was really flourishing on the left. And we thought that anti-Semitism on the right had been in check. Over the last several months, though, we see anti-Semitism on the right in America is exploding. What about in Mexico?
Well,
Is it exploding on the right as well?
not so much.
Interesting.
Historically, during World War II, for example, and before that, the most of the anti-Semitism that happened in Mexico was from the right and the extreme right. But yes, now we see a lot of anti-Zionism, that is a new form of anti-Semitism
Sure.
in the streets, etc. And we have BDS. Okay, there was no BDS. Mexico has a free trade agreement with Israel, but there's BDS now. But it's a BDS that came just after October 7th.
And
Okay,
that's from the left, not from the
and
right.
that's from the left, and that's from the regime of the government or groups that are in some way close to the regime
Right.
of Morena party. But what we didn't have, thank God, okay, is any type of violence, violent anti-Semitism. We have
Amen.
no, thank God,
We've had that
knock
here in America. Right.
on wood. We do not have had any type of violent
Right.
incidents against Jews or institutions.
Marcos, I want to thank you for joining us. I
No,
am humbled by your willingness to really explore the history of Mexico's Jewish community and the vibrancy of its Jewish community today. And I want to remind our viewers, our listeners, to like, subscribe, go to canjubelieve.com. And if you want to learn more about the Mexican Jewish community, just jump online. It is a rich, lovely community that is growing and thriving. And
let me tell you, Brad, first of all, to thank you very much for the opportunity of speaking a little bit about our amazing and remarkable community. As you mentioned, is a very strong, very structured, and in some way is like an example of Jewish strength and Jewish unity. But we receive constantly each year many groups from Jewish federations or Jewish institutions or individuals that travel to Mexico City, and there's some groups and some providers of Jewish tourism in Mexico.
it's
And
wonderful. My dad did it. He had the best time. He loved it. And great food, by the way. I hear Mexico City, it's become a foodie capital.
well, yes, and also we have a lot of digital nomads from the U.S. and
Exactly.
other places
Exactly.
in neighborhoods, very trendy neighborhoods, where you hear more English and other languages than Spanish.
I like it. His name is Marcus Metta Cohen. My name is Brad Pomerance, and you've been watching, you've been listening to Can You Believe?